What's going on, people? Happy Monday. Hope you all had an excellent Easter and 420, depending on which holiday it is that you celebrate. Today, we've got a really, really good back-to-back as we start to wrap up the spring and move into the summer season. Another episode of Lost. We're doing What Kate Did, which a Lost episode, finally, that gives us some answers to something. I don't know, Luke. Did we have any more questions after this one? I don't know. I feel like I finally got enough answers on Kate.
On Kate, definitely, but then you have the island side of the matter, and that will always present more questions than it answers. So a well balanced episode of Lost, and I'm
Always.
really getting into Lost habit now with predicting how certain scenes are going to play out, and we'll get into that.
Yes, you have truly become one with the Lost Hive. And then after that, we will, of course, be reviewing Ryan Coogler's new movie, Sinners, which people are championing, not just for the quality of the movie, but for people showing up en masse to an original movie for once. All of that and more on today's episode of Talkin' Lost. All right, Luke. So this week's episode of Lost, we have season 2, episode 9, What Kate Did. So after kind of the craziness of last week, somebody's dead, everybody's running around, everybody's not sure what to do. We have sort of a quieter come down episode, sort of. But what it instead doubles as is an episode where we get an answer to a long overhanging mystery. This is our next Kate backstory episode, but unlike the ones in last season, which felt like overly like they needed to overly make up the mystery and constantly build up. Oh, what did Kate do? What did Kate do? What did Kate do? Now we finally get the answer in the episode, What Kate Did. And it's also through the lens of having to try and save Sawyer, who is, again, sick to the point of dying. But as she comes to find out, Sawyer may not necessarily be Sawyer. So, and then also off in the corner, you have John, Michael, and Eko, once again, trying to figure out what's going on with the hatch, and Eko actually providing a missing piece that Locke necessarily needed. So already we're starting to amp up the friendship level between those two, the two very overtly mysterious characters who seem bonded to the island in some way, shape, or form. But first things first, Kate and Sawyer, we finally find out what it is that Kate did. After so many episodes of build up, so many episodes of mystery, she's being chased by this marshal. We don't exactly know what's going on. She clearly did something really bad. And this episode, we find out she killed her dad, or somebody who she thought was her stepdad, but it turned out was her actual dad. So, Luke, was this reveal a little bit underwhelming, or did it make perfect sense for Kate's character?
No, no, our little terrorist over here. It's perfect explanation. She's got the big daddy issues, biggest on the island. Actually, no, her and Sawyer both like just massive
I don't know.
parental
Jacks are
issues.
pretty up there once you find out just how
Okay, basically half the cast.
everybody has daddy issues. Sawyer, Kate, Jack,
Now that I
Locke,
think about
they
it, it's
all
like
have
pretty much
daddy issues.
everyone.
Son is
Right.
in there too.
Oh, but that's the key to the show. Is that
Yes,
the island
daddy
just brought
issues.
everyone who has massive daddy issues.
Yes.
But yeah, that makes it. That is living up to the potential of what she could have been doing. The episode starts of her picking mangoes. And I'm like, okay, only two things can happen here. Either one, Locke's gonna show up, or two, she's gonna see something weird, and she does see a black horse, which comes back in the flashback, and then comes back in the next episode. Again, that kind of Alice in Wonderlandy vibe that this island has, where basically anything can appear. So, and we'll
I,
get to that.
I love how too it's another one of those things where we're so deep into the island lore at this time that by the time the episode ends and her and Sawyer are like, Sawyer's alive and she's like showing him out outside, they both see the black horse, and Kate's like, "You're seeing that, right?" And Sawyer's like, "Yeah," and that Sawyer sees it because he's the one that reacts to it first. So it's another one of the instances of the island playing its magical tricks in order to help people move past trauma. And this time, like I said, it's not just the classic case of patricide, killing your dad. It's the classic case of, okay, her mom left who she thought was her dad, who's this army guy. Obviously, again, different lifestyles. Ended up getting with this loser, Wayne, who would beat her frequently. And clearly also, was a little bit too lustful after Kate when she was a kid. And Kate, of course, grew up hating him, idolizing who she thought was her actual dad. Then it turns out the reason why her mom and her actual dad were never together is because this is actually her real dad, her mom's childhood friend, who, again, she was always in love with, despite the fact that she could never get away from him. And it's just something about that just drives Kate nuts and up a wall. And so what does she do? She puts him down one night when he comes home drunk, lights up a gas canister and blows up the house. And good old Wayne is gone. Unfortunately, Wayne has come back to haunt her in the form of a ghost possessing Sawyer, sort of. Well, first it appears in the form of a black horse, and then it's in the form of a ghost, possessing Sawyer, who she realizes she has to have one last conversation with because she has to kind of atone for her actions. So she has to put that, so that trauma, that grief behind her. And of course, Jack is trying to help her, but unfortunately, these are areas that Jack has no expertise in. Even though Jack does have daddy issues, unfortunately, he's not quite equipped to help Kate out in this sense. As she said,
And Kate is just losing it this entire episode. She goes to Saeed, and Saeed says, I saw Walt in the jungle before Shannon was shot. It's like, hey, do you see something? I don't know. Do you see something? So these people are like relating to each other, going crazy, and then as the show goes on, I think that'll be more important. And she kisses Jack just like that.
yes,
Which was like,
finally.
whoa.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I said,
I didn't think we were there yet.
there's a lot of tension being addressed this episode, this season.
I thought like 2-3 more seasons before that. But then she goes back to Sawyer, and then she, as you mentioned, yells at the ghost of her dad.
And that's the other thing too. Also, this episode finally answers is it finally explains why Kate keeps going back to Sawyer over Jack, even though Jack is clearly the more obvious choice, if you will. But it definitely explains a lot, and also I feel like it adds more to Sawyer as well, because now you understand why these two have had such a tepid rivalry. Because Sawyer doesn't know it yet, but Kate is attributing all of these character traits that she had from her dad to Sawyer ultimately, even though Sawyer has kind of been pushed in this way, obviously for vastly different reasons. You come, you can understand why Kate would, find so much in common with the dashing rogue like that, because ultimately that was her template for role models growing up. There's a reason why. Again, our loves that we have in our life, they always come back to our parents. We always base them off of the opposite sex member. Guys base their attributes for what they want in a romantic partner off of their mom, and then girls with their dad, and vice versa. It's the whole, fucking oh my god.
Ask Freud. He knows better.
Yeah. It's the whole Freud. It's the whole oh my god, what's the fucking Greek? Oedipus. It's the whole Oedipus complex. The whole thing. We all secretly want to sleep with our parents. Let's just get it out of the way right there. What's it called? Sorry to make this uncomfortable again with psychology, but I feel like this is no stranger. I feel like
Lost demands it. Lost demands it.
Lost demands it. It always does. Lindelof is a fan of all sorts of mythologies and theologies and ideologies and all of that stuff, and he likes to tackle all of it. So do Kate's daddy issues get resolved? That's what's kind of crazy, is despite there being more Kate flashback episodes after this, I realize now that I'm like, oh yeah, they really did need to address this, because I didn't realize just how much ambiguity, because we got some answers for almost all the characters last season, including why Kate was in Australia, but we still have like a couple things that weren't addressed from season 1. Like we still didn't know what it was that this great crime that Kate had done that had this marshal chasing after her like crazy. We still don't know why Charlie was in Australia. Literally, Charlie's the only season 1 character that they never told us why he went to Australia. We know his backstory, but we don't know why he went to Australia. And we're also still getting into the tail end survivors as well. We have Ana Lucia's backstory that got, as far as, her inciting incident, but we don't necessarily know what it is that got her on the plane. We're about to find out with Eko. But the whole thing is that we're, like I said, this season has been all about filling in the pieces, giving us alternate perspectives, except for with Kate, who we finally just got the ultimate answer to. So obviously the other bit, kind of B plot of this episode is
this was my A plot. I get that's the main plot, but this is like
that was the character building moment. This is the lore building moment where it's like we're finally getting more into it. Where
we're back on track.
Yeah. So
when Jack's in the episode, I know that the plot's gonna be moving along because he's been absent from the main cast for a bit.
Yeah. So like I said, it's Eko. The tail end survivors are starting to see the hatch. Michael, Locke showing them around. Michael wants to explore the computer a bit, see what's going on, and then Locke, of course, shows Eko the film. That Doctor. Oh, I can't remember what that scientist's name is. Francois Choi's character. Explaining kind of how the hatch works, but obviously again there's bits of film missing. And Eko then, of course, does his usual bit where he gets up very, very silently, goes to the other side of the room, pacing around, comes back with a
He's
Bible.
great at stretching the runtime to 40 minutes.
It's
The writers
perfect.
thought, okay, we can't always fill the 40 or so minutes, so we can get a guy who's mysterious. He just walks away, and then he'll tell you
Yeah,
later.
and then when he does tell you, he's going to give this big, long
Yeah,
soliloquy about the origins of mythology and man and all of that and the Bible. And he's what's it called? And he's like, I believe that you would refer to it as the Old Testament, blah 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 blah. How it goes into like the pre-comings of Christ. And then he basically pulls out the Bible and he's like, I think that this may be something that could be of more use to you than me. And John opens it and he sees more pieces of film. And it's
but anyway, have this thing that you exactly need.
I love how certain characters in Lost can only work if they're like with certain characters. Like the only character that Eko would have been able to give this whole soliloquy explanation to is Locke, because everybody else would have been like, get to the point already. You
They're
know,
so perfect for each other.
it's a match made
Locke
in heaven.
has his other cryptic fellow to
Yes.
bounce off of. It's great.
It's a match made in heaven, ultimately, perfectly. And while the revelation of the extra reels of film and putting the two together doesn't give us all the answers, what it does tell us is, okay, this whole pushing the button thing, it's not necessarily a Schrodinger's cat situation, because their whole thing that they say is that there hasn't been a problem since the last incident. So clearly that shows that, like, okay, something does happen if you don't push the button. What that is, we don't know, but something will happen.
We almost found out because they were running kind of low because Kate just left after getting choked out by Sawyer, and then the countdown was like 10 seconds away. Locke had to rush in.
I would say we're so close to finding out,
Yeah.
because of course you could probably figure out, again, it's just naturally given storytelling. They've been spending all season pushing this damn button, so you can naturally assume that at the end of the season, someone, it may not be who you expect, but someone is going to not push the button, and that's what will lead.
It was too far too early in the season for them to not push the button. It's
exactly.
It's like telling us, hey, if it wasn't obvious enough already, the button will not be pressed eventually.
Next week is episode 10, so we'll be just about halfway through the season next week. So, like I said, that's finally when some things will start to change. Like I said, we still have a couple more new character backstories that we need to get into. Like I said, we got Ana Lucia's last week, then we're gonna get Eko's next week. Speaking of which, Jack saw a little moment that he had with Ana Lucia. What did you think of that? Where Ana Lucia is still, Ana Lucia is still kind of
speaking about.
Ana Lucia is kind of still off on her own. She's kind of sulking a bit. She still doesn't want to interact with the rest of the survivors. And Jack comes up and offers her the drink that she got when they were kind of like talking to each other, flirting with each other at the airport. Ultimately, Jack and Ana Lucia, was that a pair that could have ever worked out if not for landing on the plane and the island? Or no, you think they never would have worked out even in the mainland?
No, I think they could work out now. Like you have the Sawyer Kate power couple, you have this power couple. I don't know. We'll have to see it. This isn't really like as much of a romance heavy show as I might have thought before.
Which, if you ask me, we're always so much better off for it.
Yeah. We had the Shannon Saeed. We just like allusions to Charlie Claire, but not really. And so I think Kate and Sawyer is going to be our main focal point of romance.
And then obviously Son and Jim, but they're married. So
but they're already established. So
but this, like I said, this is a big stepping point for Kate and Sawyer, especially because I feel like this was an extra bonding moment, because obviously once Kate managed to make the ghost of Wayne go away, and Sawyer wakes up and he's like, who the hell is Wayne? I thought that was just hilarious. And then when they step outside and then they both see the black horse, which was interesting too, also is, you're going to have to refresh my memory here, but this is another one of those instances where the omens that you think you only see on the island also show up on the real world, because when Kate's first arrested by the marshal in the flashback and they're driving to wherever they are, the whole reason why she's able to escape is because of the black horse on the highway. So clearly, obviously, the episode opens, and obviously, once it wraps, you assume that the black horse is Wayne in some way. But in reality, it could be maybe another omen from the island, perhaps, because as we've seen, the island is also, it does not just throw these little hints in there on the island itself. Like, they do show up in the real world, especially as we get later on into the show. Yeah. So
again, the island, from what I've seen, it's not evil. It's just this force, this entity that shows you what you need to learn a lesson or whatever. Yes. So I'm not looking for like a be all answer of there's the island is this mythical figure or whatever. No, it's just a force. Me being a Stephen King reader, I can understand that. Right. It's a force Oh, he loves like over explaining himself. I don't think Lost will make that same mistake.
Right. See, and this is part of the reason again why I don't understand why people like had such gripes with the ending. It's like it's very clearly obvious that they're telling you what the island is. Like it could not be more obvious. Anybody who's ever read anything in science fiction, anything in fantasy, anything Stephen King related, like you said, knows that there are like that writers will throw in these forces, forces of nature, as these kind of ancillary forces, and it has been made very clear to us over the course of the last, our 31st episode recapping this show. It has been made very clear to us over the course of the last 31 episodes that this island is not just any old island. There is something to this island, and it doesn't, but because of kind of the nature of the show, it doesn't really need to tell us exactly everything, like pull a Stephen King and just over explain everything, because then that would take away from the central mystery and the show wouldn't be what it is. So
Yeah.
Is the trauma between Kate and Sawyer resolved? We shall find out ultimately on next week's episode and our last week of our last Lost recap of April before I head to Nashville for a week. The 23rd Psalm is next week, but that is what Kate did. But stay tuned for what's right directly after this if you're listening to this on Spotify, because oh man, we got a doozy in mind. Ryan Coogler's 5th feature film, Sinners. We're going to be reviewing that next, and oh boy, we've got a lot to talk about there. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
Now you can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. I need to upload the Mission Impossible 3 video today. I think. Did you already?
I already did. Yes, for
All
right
right.
now, it's holding up against copyright for now.
All right.
We'll see.
I'm gonna post it after we finish the Sinners review. But
Yeah.
a lot of fun there.
Yes, I don't have it set to go up until tomorrow. So, but
Yeah.
so that'll be fine. I'll let you.
And we're doing 5 tomorrow.
Yes, we're recording 5 tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we are chugging along with these Mission Impossible rewatches. And of course, you can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Like, subscribe. You guys know the deal. We'll see you guys next on Sinners. What's up, guys? What's going on? Yeah, that's right. You didn't think you'd be seeing this from us today, but finally, Luke, we have a momentous occasion on our hands. The celebration for original film, the drive of studios into sole focus on IP has finally brought us to the point where an original movie that is very much based on a movie that already came out, but nevertheless, an original feeling movie has been released on the biggest possible format known right now to us in IMAX on all the biggest screens. This movie is sexy. This movie has violence, has blood, has gore. It is Ryan Coogler's 5th feature film, Sinners. One could make the argument his first original film since Fruitvale Station, his directorial debut, is based on real events, and obviously his subsequent 3 films, Creed, Black Panther, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, are all IP-based. So, first things first, I want to break down the hype surrounding this movie, because I think that's more important than anything else, because this hasn't happened yet with an original movie that's been filmed on this budget and level so far this decade. Obviously, again, we've talked about with movies how the shift after COVID seems to be make everything bigger, make everything longer, but with those bigger, longer movies, we've noticed how even with the most successful ones, for the most part, they're all based on IP in some way. Dune is based off of a book. Avatar, I think, is the only one that breaks the rule, because that's James Cameron's original property and idea.
But even that is basically based on Dune. And
exactly. Batman, based on IP. Barbie, based on IP. Oppenheimer, based on a book, So we've had all these movies that have been based on IP, and now everybody's coming out in droves to celebrate Sinners, a movie filmed on IMAX, literally to the point where Ryan Coogler released a video breaking down like the different formats and why, you'll get the full effect of the movie watching it on IMAX on the biggest screen possible. And after having watched it on the biggest screen possible, I could definitely vouch for it. This movie has a certain aura about it, like every other Ryan Coogler movie that's come out. There's a reason why he's regarded as one of the more special members of the new film brats generation that I've been talking about throughout this whole decade. And definitely it feels like with this one, in particular, he was going for something really special, something really, really unique here that he hadn't really done before, really had a chance to do. So, I guess for lack of a better word, in order to kick this podcast discussion off, did this movie live up to the hype for you? Because I've got a little bit of a loaded answer, but I wanna hear your thoughts first. Like, because you every time I see a movie that gets this much hype, my first immediate thought is, oh no. Oh no, they're already setting this movie up for failure, ultimately, if it doesn't live up to the hype.
Well, I think I saw it before like everyone got to it, so I thought, okay, it has very good reviews. Few people that we know, like get some slight early screens. They have good things to say about it. Uh, so I saw it Thursday, and yes, absolutely, it does live up to that hype. Now everyone over the weekend has been droving towards it, and they've driven the hype up even more. I don't know if it's like that good. I think it's a very good movie. Like I said, original. Like, and what is original these days? It's just take old stories and put something new to them. Add some new flavor. This absolutely does that. I'm not going to call it unoriginal. It definitely is combining many elements. I saw a great video like how to create original story. Just like take two ideas and mash them together,
Right.
and that usually works. And this absolutely is that. And so yes, I saw it in IMAX. Only like there's very little of it is in IMAX format. But when it is in IMAX format, it's like
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially one scene towards like the halfway point, which is like
Yeah.
probably one of the best scenes of the decade. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, the power of movies. I was
Yeah.
thinking,
That when that scene happened, that was just to me where I'm like, Ryan Coogler is so good at what he does. He truly is deserving of everything that he does because a scene like that should not work, like, at all. But the fact that it does, and it does as well as it does, it is just unfucking believable. Yeah, I guess kind of my worry with the hype is that I always see this happen whenever a movie, specifically an original movie, gets this much hype because what it does is it starts to turn it from what it is into something that it's not. And that's when the detractors and that's when the haters come out with the hot takes and everything. And because that's what I want to be explicitly said, because you're right, Luke. Original movies are always usually a combination of two or three other ideas that we've already seen. You know, and that's why we should always be praising them. But the difference here is that because the hype, I feel like, is trying to turn this into something that it's not. I went in and I saw a really, really, really well-made horror movie with a lot of heart and soul put into it. That's got a lot of kind of extra layers and edge to it that makes it more than just, for lack of a better word, a generic slasher. But the fact that people are acting like this is a movie that they've never seen before, they've never seen anything quite like this, and I'm like, I saw
yeah,
this movie
like pump the brakes just a bit. It's a very good movie, but
Till Dawn. It starred George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. It mirrored the structure of this movie mirrors that almost to a T, literally down to, spoiler alert, the one brother dying and coming back as a vampire. I don't think that that's a spoiler though, because they kind of told us that in the trailer.
I'm glad I didn't watch that trailer. I saw it come out. It was like 3 minutes. Okay, I'm not watching it.
Yeah,
That's
and
just that.
already the marketing is doing the thing where they're giving away a lot of the movie in the trailer. Like, I think that's the other problem too, is again, it's the classic case of From Dusk Till Dawn. From Dusk Till Dawn, the reason why that movie works is because the first hour of that movie has nothing to do with vampires. You don't even know that there are going to be vampires in the movie until you get to, it's just a crime movie for the first hour until you get to the club, and then the shift happens after the band stops playing and the Salma Hayek thing happens, and then the slaughter happens, and it truly comes out of nowhere. This movie, they're clearly setting up right from the get-go, oh, these are going to be vampires dealing with. But the difference here is that they're taking a much more religious and musical angle, because this is not a movie about like surviving the night against vampires. This is a movie, again, set in antebellum South, shortly after, or during the prime of Jim Crow, early 1930s. So you've got those period piece elements that we're dealing with as well. Obviously dealing with, the treatment of race in the South. But again, Ryan Coogler is a genius and knows what he's doing. And so he's not going to do the typical, oh, vampires as just a white metaphor, because that's not what this is at all. Instead, what he's doing is he's telling a very, very impressive tale about kind of the evolution of music and how that really was a source of escape for black sharecroppers around this time period, and also how, again, the reason why why vampirism would be tempting in this instance, and kind of how they build up to that as well, with kind of the slow reveals of the vampire, still very much mired in traditional vampire folklore. Again, this movie is only 4 months after the release of Nosferatu. So clearly this is showing that not only are horror movies back and being done on the biggest screen possible, but vampire stories like this are back too. Because listen, I'll say this much: just because something emulates another vampire movie that I've seen doesn't mean that I'm not going to enjoy this. Because let me tell you something: when this movie broke down and dirty with the vampire reveal, oh man, and this was bringing back all my favorite bits of vampire. This was also combining like a bit of like the zombie vampire bits where it's more like a virus that just spreads throughout, like
It's like a hive mind.
exactly, like a
Almost.
hive mind, like your 30 Days of Nights, your I Am Legend, stuff like that, kind of exactly. Where as soon as one person turns, it's a hive mind mentality in the sense of where like, okay, they gotta kill the lead vampire ultimately, and showing kind of how it spreads and very much setting it up, with the obviously again the main character Preacher Boy, his father is obviously advising him against, going into the blues, that's the devil's music, it gets kind of into the whole, origin story of, how evolving music over time has always been viewed as problematic and unrelatable by, the previous generation. But, and so there's always been the argument of like, oh, it's, you've got the devil in you, it's a pathway to sin ultimately, and this movie kind of is dealing with that a lot, where something that is supposed to be created as a haven for these people to escape from their lives during the day ends up ultimately becoming a nightmare once these vampires show up, And I realize now that I kind of jumped the gun with the review there, but Luke, ultimately at the end of the day, what did you think of this movie and, how it contributes to the vampire lore, the vampire genre ultimately, and really kind of what Ryan Coogler is doing here thematic wise as well?
Yeah, first of all, I imagine a world where this is advertised with zero hints of vampires,
Right.
and then you're watching it, and then like halfway through the movie, this guy he lands because he was like, oh, this guy he didn't just run through that, he
Yeah.
landed into the shot, and like, and then that's like a fully turns on its head. Obviously, you kind of have to sell the movie with something extra like this. I guess this is how the Nolan vampire movie rumor started, because they're both using IMAX cameras,
Right.
and then something gets misread in the document. But no, what I love most about this is that people are having like numerous different takes on what the movie is about. Like, is it about racism? Is it about people appropriating other people's music and culture, and vampires being the vessel for that? Whatever the vampires are a metaphor for, they're being used brilliantly. And vampires are such an iconic monster of fiction that they're so versatile. You had Nosferatu, which is this super gothic European uh, situation, and here you have Sinners. It's like this, like as you said, the antebellum South, the the hive mind sort of thing, like, and just the resurgence of vampire media, like this Abigail, Midnight Mass, just so many different ways to use
Night Teeth
vampires.
on Netflix, The Day Shift with Jamie Foxx. That trashy Netflix vampire installments are also getting their chance to shine too.
Yeah, I still think Midnight Mass is probably my favorite of everything I said, but this is like such a welcome addition. And then the portrayal of the vampires, obviously through Remick, the leader.
Yeah.
Uh, so from what I gather from this movie, Irish people bad. Do not let them in.
Do not let them in. Well, that's just also just like a classic case of vampirism, where it's like, the whole, that's an old folklore as
Yeah,
well, in
I
order
didn't
to
actually
like
know that, so
be
that was new to me.
yeah, that was an old metaphor that was always told for like to like children. Ironically, in Eastern European villages where those myths kind of originated, the whole thing of where it's like, don't let strangers into your home. I believe it was also supposed to be a cautionary tale against, letting British soldiers into your home as well, during American Revolution times. But that, like I said, that story, that folklore has always been a thing. But I guess we should probably break down, the actual plot of this movie. Basically, what happens is, what's interesting is that even though as Michael B. Jordan is as marketed as being the lead of this movie, he's one of several actors this year in productions that are playing identical twins. He is not the main character of this movie, I would say. He is kind of the kickoff, the inciting incident. But the main character of this movie is this kid named Preacher Boy, who is the cousin of Michael B. Jordan's character. Let me pull it up here. Portrayed by first-time actor as well, which I thought was absolutely insane. Miles Caton as Sammy Preacher Boy Moore. He is recruited by his cousins, collectively referred to as Smoke and Stack, identical twins portrayed by Michael B. Jordan, who've just returned from Chicago where it's revealed that they work for the Capone outfit as well. They want to set up their own juke joint, as they say, which again you would find these all over the place in antebellum South. These random kind of middle of nowhere establishments. They would set up these massive warehouses and halls. Again they would just be cooking food and playing music all night, where black folk could come and they could let off some steam. They could dance the night away. All that good
Who
stuff.
better to talk about that than two white guys?
The two white guys. Exactly. It's perfect. And of course, along the way, they assemble their their crew, their entourage as well. You've got in this cast of characters assembled, you have Annie, who is Smoke's former wife, who it's revealed that they lost a child together, and she's also got some potential supernatural dealings. She dabbles a little bit with voodoo, which is why she's able to kind of understand kind of the presence and the threat of the vampires early on when they reveal themselves. You have Cornbread, who is a childhood friend of theirs, who they get portrayed by Omar Benson Miller, who's kind of a bigger set guy, so they can kind of have him act as security, and they pull like a fun little switcheroo where they think, oh, he's going to be the ones to help survive at the end of the night. Nope, not even a little bit. You've got Delta Slim, who's an old school jazz musician who kind of play, alcoholic down on his luck, who's playing for money, who is played by Delroy Lindo, who is usually perfect for these kinds of parts, and he gives a speech in the middle of the movie that is almost sure to win him an Oscar nomination. You've got Asian couple Bo and Grace Chow, portrayed by Yao and Jun Li from Babylon. So that also, again, touches on an area, a demographic that was almost never explored in in these types of stories. I believe the only kind of other period piece from this time period that takes place in this time period that also features the only other one that I've seen that actually features Asian characters in any capacity is Deadwood. So I like that kind of representation was being shown here. That was kind of nice as well.
And they even use them as like this intimidating scene with Remick, where
yes,
he speaks in a certain way. Not to go too spoilery, but that was like,
we'll get into that, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then of course the cast is rounded out by Pearline, who is kind of this Southern belle who comes in, portrayed by Jayme Lawson. Ironically, another connection to the Batman, Mayor Bella Real from the Batman and the Penguin shows.
Yeah, I thought she looked familiar.
Yep, that's her.
Okay, that's where I get it.
That's
from.
her,
Okay.
and of course, Preacher Boy falls head over heels as well as the one white character in the first half of the movie, who immediately, again, because of the way that the trailers spoil things, the way that again these types of stories usually go, the one white character, the gorgeous white woman, they're like, oh man, one of the lead character, one of the Michael B. Jordans is going to fall for her, and things are not going to go well. Hailee Steinfeld as Mary, and oh lord, we just got to talk about that for a second. Like, oh man, Hailee Steinfeld has always been gorgeous. That there is not a again that is not to be questioned in any way, shape, or form. But this is the first time where she is fully mature. She is a woman now. She is fully grown. She's a year older than me. She's 28, and oh man, they finally let her get down and dirty in this one. And oh my god, it is the hottest that she has ever been. Unfortunately, like I said, as they're getting everything together, as they're building it up, as that's the other thing too. They really do spend quite a lot of time with these characters in the first half of the movie, getting them together as they're getting the squad together in order to build up the juke joint. You learn about their respective backstories and histories and all kind of the pathos and origin behind these characters. There's one particularly painful scene where Delroy Lindo's character has a monologue where he's explaining the reason why he's kind of bummed out and washed up is because he watched a friend of his get lynched. So what's it called? So that, of course, is a really powerful moment right there. And then so they're getting everything set up, and then, like I said, out of nowhere, because other than that's the thing, it kills me. You're right, how the trailers really did spoil this, because again, there's a world where you go into this movie and you think it's just going to be a period piece, and I'm just trying to think again how much better it would have been if we didn't know that the second half was going to be a horror movie about them surviving the night against vampires. And like, if we didn't know that going into this movie, I feel like this movie would be exponentially better than it already is. And it's already great to begin with, but still, us knowing that detail going in really does kind of take away from it a little bit.
Yeah, you'd be hearing the word of mouth, like, oh, this movie is actually something completely different to what it's.
And again, it really shows the power of this movie. The fact that even with that knowledge going in, this movie still has the presence of word of mouth that it does. And then, of course, you have the vampire introduction, where all of a sudden you cut to this random house in the middle of nowhere. You have Remick running. And again, the hints are all still pretty there. The sun is going down. He's running like crazy. And there's some burn patches on his skin. He's being pursued by several Cherokee forces. But of course, they're like, okay, the sun goes down. They're like, all right,
All right, we're out of here.
have mercy be unto you who let this devil into your home. And then the couple who lets him in, who you think are a nice couple at first, but then it turns out at the end, maybe they weren't so nice. Of course, it's revealed that Remick is a vampire. He's feeding on them. And the other thing too, also, is I like how like there's not like a delayed bit of time between when the vampires when you're bitten versus when you turn into a vampire. Like the change happens pretty quickly. So that's why I like how, again, it's like that's where like the zombie-ness of it comes in, where again they transform pretty quickly ultimately. So obviously, again, the juke joint happens. I like how they're able to like have the juke joint sessions be the way that they are without what's it called, and we're able to like kind of explore that, and that acts as like a natural transition into the more crazy, chaotic second half. And then the music, oh man, I was telling this to Nathaniel, who I saw it with this past weekend. Man, that music is a fucking character in this movie. It really is, because oh my lord, fucking so the sequence we were referring to early on, once the music gets going. So obviously they've set up this kid, Preacher Boy, as being like this amazing, unbelievable jazz musician. He plays a guitar that was supposedly owned by Charlie Parker. So already, we're not quite getting into Tenacious D territory, but we are sort of in that realm of, like the music, when you play it, that's got power ultimately. It's when you play music, you tap into the spirits of both the ancestors and future generations. And you have this sequence in the middle where he starts playing the blues on the guitar. And all of a sudden, it cuts to the right, and you see another, a black rock and roller. I'm assuming that's supposed to be Jimi Hendrix. And eventually, you kind of get into this montage where it's like all of these different generations of music that have been inspired, from Africa. You get like original African dancers, you get modern day hip hop rappers, all that pop up in this one montage in order to act as the spirits. And man,
it's all one take.
It's all one take. And man, Ludwig Göransson, who has been Ryan Coogler, he was his college roommate. He's been his collaborator. He's now this mega, massive, score composer. Mandalorian, He's Nolan. He did Nolan's last two movies with Tenet. He won his Oscar, back-to-back Oscar winner with Black Panther and Oppenheimer. And man, does he get to cook with gas here in terms of how
he keeps reinventing himself. Like he's never repeated like outside of like the Black Panther sequels, but even that, the second one has those sequences with the Talkin people with the sirens, and this one with the guitars. So I'm just excited to see if he's like attached to a movie. I'm like, okay, I will see this movie because there's going to be a great score, and this one, like I keep listening to it like after the movie, and that's always a good sign for me, because if I'm listening to the score after the movie, just reliving those moments.
And I think what's even cooler about this too, as well, is the fact that after, again, a Creed movie, and after he single-handedly brings the Rocky franchise back from the dead, and two Marvel movie Black Panther movies, how this feels not only like his biggest, most epic movie, and not just because of the Imax, the way that it's filmed, because again, the fact that the majority of this movie is spent in close quarters. Again, the entire second half of this movie is all in one setting, in the juke joint. When the Survive the Night kind of takes over. And again, it's his biggest, but it's his most intimate and most personal movie, you can tell, because you can even tell in the way that he discusses this behind the scenes, where he talks about how this was inspired by his uncle, who was a musician as well, how it kind of ties into his ancestry, the fact that he also has, mixed race. Also, this is the fact that also tied into Hailee Steinfeld and the importance of her character, the fact that she is a mixed race character. She even said her grandfather is half Filipino, half black. And I'm like, oh man, it's Hailee. So that's why you always were a little bit extra hot, because you had a little bit of color in you. But what's it called? But at the risk of getting myself canceled, what's it called? Yeah, he also talks about how again, because that ancestry, that always, he's from the Bay Area, which is one of the most diverse areas. And he also goes into, again, the ancestry of the banjo, how an instrument that's tied and mostly attributed to Appalachian styles and music actually originated from Africa and such, and the whole idea of, like, again, how the bad guys in this movie are Irish vampires. There's this whole amazing musical sequence where after Remick has turned most of the juke joint people who end up leaving the joint, and he's doing this massive Irish big long song and dance number surrounding them, and it's wonderfully so. But they also get into illusions of how that kind of originated from Africa ultimately, how all of these, and so what you have here is all of these different massive culture clashes, via music, via cultures and stuff, again, he gets into this in every one of his movies. Both Black Panther movies feature into different, subsets of cultures and conflicts. Again, Rocky and Adonis in Creed. The Wakandans and the Talokans in Wakanda Forever. He always gets into these different types of conflicts between different cultures, and it's amazing to me how he's still able to do that in, again, what would otherwise, again, just be a generic survive the night horror movie where they're just having to survive against vampires. I mean, again, we've seen that horror set up so many different times in so many different movies. But, again, going into Stephen King, the Mist, that's literally the entire premise of the Mist. But how he's able to, again, mix it with so much metaphor and make it so personal to him. I was telling Nathaniel, I'm like, the story of this movie is not having to survive the night against vampires. The story of this movie is the music. We're literally watching like the evolution of Afrocentric music in real time, ultimately.
Yeah, Coogler is like one of the best blockbuster directors because say what you will about the Marvel films, they're still the part of the MCU machine, but he can make them like super personal and character driven. Even he had that impossible task of making Wakanda Forever a good movie, which he
He
for the
did.
most part accomplished.
He did. I still am a staunch Wakanda Forever defender. That movie is really, really
And we
good.
know we know he's dropped hints of Black Panther 3, so obviously that's going to happen somewhere down the line. I think he's working on X-Files reboot or something. So
I want him to do
s-
more originals, though. That's the thing. I don't want him to be
exactly.
stuck in the Hollywood IP machine. Black Panther 3, okay, that's fine because but what that will be is that will be his Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where that will be his kind of goodbye to his time in Marvel, because usually after 3 movies, that's usually, unless they're the Russo brothers, that's usually when directors start to take a step away.
Yeah, but either way, like he's one of the better blockbuster directors. He makes every story personal to him. He puts his own messaging in there, and he keeps the balance really well, the personal and the exciting big vampires breaking into the juke joint kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, again, that brings us to the turn of the movie. Where again, what did you think of, again? Because we obviously know what's coming based on, again, what we see Remick do in that one scene with what's revealed to be the KKK couple. But what did you think of like the reveal and like how you saw the transformation started? How you see like people go outside individually. First, Mary goes outside, and then Cornbread goes when he has to take a piss, and then the way that like they slowly build up the impending dread, and then the eyes glow red, and then when Remick goes up into the air, then the next scene we see Mary coming back into the juke joint. But by that point, we all know they're like, oh, that's not Mary ultimately. And then obviously when she takes Stack, when she kills Stack, and then when Cornbread comes back up, like just these little moments and scenes where it's like building up the dramatic irony, where the audience is aware of what's going on, but the characters inside are slowly becoming aware of what's going on. Like everything, like once that happened, I'm like, oh, that stuff is masterful to me. Like it is absolutely masterful. And also, again, I don't want to sleep on Michael B. Jordan either, because again, I feel like we've been talking a lot about the movie and Coogler, but it's weird because again, Michael B. Jordan is the main character of this movie. He's playing twins, but the fact that again, almost, people are almost having to remind themselves, oh yeah, Michael B. Jordan is in this movie, and he is given possibly the performance of his career, playing both these twins, and also again delivering two polar opposite types of performances. As Smoke, who is more reserved, more guarded, more closed off, obviously because of the tragedy he suffered, versus Stack, who's kind of the more free spirited, joyful, rough rousing of the two. So naturally, of course, you could assume which one is going to die first, but it's still like the fact that Michael B. Jordan is able to give these two vastly different types of performances, but really again because they're both Michael B. Jordan. You can sense the closeness between these two. How these two really are a duo. They are two halves of the same whole. You see it obviously when they kill the snake in the beginning of the movie. Ultimately, so
Yeah,
what
I almost think that's almost a compliment to him that we haven't really talked about them because he's been he's been in every Coogler movie
yes,
as is Killmonger as Creed. He was in Fruitvale Station. I haven't seen that one yet, but this one I would guess we're not talking about it because he just blends in so well as these two different
right.
personalities. Like, was there like digi swapping the face or whatever? I haven't looked into it, but he blends into both of them so distinctly that you're just like, okay, I buy this. These are two different people. It's not just Michael B. Jordan playing two different characters.
Right.
I think that's the biggest compliment to him and everyone in the story. So Miles Caton, his first performance. This will not be his last performance. I can
Definitely not.
tell you that much. Um, and yeah, because I'm pretty settled in, like learning about these characters, and then bang, vampire.
Yeah,
enter the scene,
exactly.
and the whole transformation, the slow trickling of various characters, like Hailee Steinfeld. She's the first of the for once the white character dies
Yes.
first.
Which by the way, that's not a real thing, but I'll get into that in a minute. I'm sorry, that's not a real thing. It's not true. That's never once happened. The black guys almost never die
yeah,
first.
it's just
Most of
just
the time
that
they don't make it. I think what happened was it was a thing of where it's like, oh, black guys never make it out alive. I'm like, that's true. But this whole, oh, the black guys always die first. I was really doing my research. I'm like, yeah, that's a myth. That's not actually a thing. Because literally every person that I've asked that said that, I'm like, okay, name me one movie where that happened. And they haven't been able to do it because it's not real.
Yeah, I think it's more so those lesser known movies that don't really make it to the big scene. But anyway, and that slow reveal, like one by one, like okay, Hailee goes out, she comes back in, she's acting a little weird.
Yeah.
Cornbread goes to take a piss, he doesn't come back for like an hour.
Yep.
And
Then
slowly
they
and
leave.
surely,
Then they let everybody leave, and then Jack goes out. He's like,
yeah,
"Oh, I'm just gonna go get the car."
and then there's the gunshots, and then the party stops, and then the second half of the movie really begins.
Yes,
And that's the scary part. That with the red eyes, the glowing eyes are just one of the best vampire effects that there is.
Yeah, just like amazing effects work. Again, like just every time that I'm like, they're gonna do a vampire story, I'm like, oh, you're doing this for the big screen for this budget. You better make this shit look good. And oh man, it looked good. The glowing eye. I love too how like the eyes, like the Remix, Jack O'Connell's eyes glowed red, while everybody else's, kind of had this white ethereal quality. I also liked how too they did the thing of where it's like, oh, you know, again, the biggest difference between vampires and zombies is zombies don't have any soul. They're just lifeless husks that are just there to consume. I like how, again, with vampires, the whole thing about vampires is vampires are supposed to be seductive charmers at the end of the day. So they still need to maintain like a piece of their original personality. But it's like once they have like the immortality, the vampire gene, it's like they something is different ultimately. There's something more ethereal, something more inherently evil to them, but like their soul is still there. And so that's what makes it so much scarier when you see them, when you as the audience know that they're now vampires, but they're having to like still kind of put on the facade, the act, for lack of a better word, like they're still regular humans, even though they're clearly not. That stuff is all great. And then specifically with Cornbread, when the reveal comes, when he comes up and he's like, yo, just let me in. And they're like, why do you have to ask permission to come in? Your big ass is coming in and out all night. And then he's like, well, this pay me my money. And then the slow reveal of like how it slowly builds up. And then he grabs Michael B. Jordan's arm and the fangs come out. Oh man, that stuff. I'm like, oh man, I am all for that.
Because like all great villains or monsters, they have their weaknesses. Like they can't come in. You can't beat them with the wooden stake or the garlic thing. They have to eat the garlic, and you're just like, oh, is one of them gonna be?
And then they had a funny bit with Delroy Lindo's character.
Yeah.
He's like, I drank too much beer. That was great.
Yeah,
that was so good.
And you do have the humor moments.
Oh yeah,
thrown in there as well, but the fear factor of it all does come shine through, especially like you said when he does grab Michael B. Jordan's arms, like it's coming, but then it still gets you.
Yes,
and that's the more impressive part.
And now, unfortunately, this is the part where again I do have some nitpicks come in, because my whole thing is it's like, okay, so, and again, these are really, really nitpicks, like really, really nitpicks. Bear with me. I'm like, okay, so they clearly suspected the white musicians when they walked up to the bar and didn't let them come in, but they're still gonna let Mary go out and negotiate with them. And then when Mary comes back and Mary's acting weird, obviously again, there's a reason why. Like I said, this is the part that's forgivable, because again, once she's been vampirized, she goes up to Stack, who she knows is holding on by a thread in terms of resisting her feminine charms. So naturally, of course, he's an easy target. So that makes sense. But then, what's it called? But then not getting Stack's body outside after again, I'm attributing like my knowledge of vampires to the fact that these characters don't necessarily know, but Wunmi Mosaku, Annie's character, clearly knows that something is not right, something is afoot. And then obviously the Jun Li character, when the vampires reveal themselves, they're threatening her daughter, and she finally is like, come on in, let's fight. And everyone's like, no, damn it. They're like, no, they're gonna kill us all.
And they dragged out one other guy who wasn't a vampire.
Yeah, they left out that one other guy who they thought was a vampire. And it's like, well, another one to the horde. That's tough. Oh. But what's it called? But that moment was just like, okay, they need to speed this. They needed to speed this section up. They couldn't let it drag out anymore. Because again, in like a Shaun of the Dead or or I feel like any other zombie movie, that section where after they find out about the reveal of the vampires and they can hear the vampires outside and they just like need to defend themselves, that section would have dragged on for like another like
Yeah.
20-30 minutes. And this is
Yeah,
an instance where
I
again,
felt that, but I think they did it in like the best way possible, like threatening her daughter, and then the guy started speaking Chinese, which
yeah,
was like, okay, this
yeah,
hive building the hive mind aspect of it all, and I
yeah,
think it logically makes sense for her
yeah.
to let them come in.
I mean, see,
It feels earned.
to me, the hive mind aspect was established immediately once you had them all dancing in the
Yeah,
Irish folk jig, which also, I will say again, once the reveal comes, once Remick is revealed to kind of be like, again, the center vampire, where it's like, okay, a certain example of what you guys were saying before is true. You know, the whole, when Preacher Boy was playing in there before, he is like, yeah, that summoned us. So like, boy, I don't know what it is about your voice, but we need that. And also how, again, this was probably the most fascinating aspect when Remick was speaking. He's like, the key way to immortality, it basically is the cure to racism. Ultimately, at the end of the day, because like we are welcoming of all blacks, whites alike. He even mentions it. It's like, yeah, the KKK was clearly setting you up to be killed. They were going to burn this place down in the morning. We just got to them first because it's revealed that the couple that Remick turned at the halfway point of the movie when he's introduced were KKK. He's like, so we ended up saving you. So and then obviously again the other people who they've turned. Again, twisting it on its head a little bit. Again, we assume that these are just mindless blood-sucking, mindless bloodsuckers. We're not even, we see that the lead guy's Irish, so we assume that he's racist. But it's more so a little bit like Get Out in that sense, where they're like kind of, come collectively join the hive ultimately, live forever. But then they're also like, but then it's also the whole thing of like, oh, you just sacrifice your identity, your individuality, your uniqueness in order to become a part of this greater, hive mass, that's just feeding off of all of your, that's just feeding off of you and by and large, kind of the masses and result, not at all metaphorical for anything that's happening today right now with the big tech takeover. But yeah, I thought that part was really to me because I'm like, okay, every vampire story has to have something in it that's unique, that slightly separates it, because kind of the interest of vampire lore to me comes from the fact that there are so many different sources, so many different kind of, little things that are changed over the years. Are vampires actually allergic to garlic? Can their reflection be seen in mirrors or whatnot? Certain vampires can't fly, certain vampires can't move fast. Some of them, it's more parasitic ultimately in nature. These vampires, I'd say, are a little bit more in the traditional sense, where again, they come off as beautiful, temptresses, but then obviously once the fangs come out, that's when things get bloody. And then of course, again, it's all setting us up for one of the greatest third act action smashes ever. Like, I'm not going to say that this is better than From Dusk Till Dawn, because From Dusk Till Dawn is slightly more progressive, because this doesn't have the From Dusk Till Dawn thing where one of the characters is bitten but you don't know it and they're trying to keep it hidden. I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't do that in hindsight, because what it did was it unfortunately revealed for, again, like you knew that at the end of the day, okay, all these guys are going to die by the end. It's like, Wunmi Mosaku, of course, hesitates, gets bitten. Smoke is forced to stake her. What's it called? Jun Li immediately just like goes out in a burst of flames by staking a vamp, by throwing a Molotov cocktail at a vamp at her husband, and they both burn together. Delroy Lindo sacrifices himself, cuts his arm, and gets, and is trying to hold off the vampires so that the other three can get upstairs, and he's of course eaten. And then Bella Real, Jayme Lawson's character, gets bitten and turned by Jack O'Connell's character as him and as Preacher Boy, Remick, and Smoke are fighting nonstop. These are the two that I love. This is the first movie in a long time where I actually remember the characters' names. I can't remember the last time where that actually happened.
yeah.
Yeah. So
It's just a testament to the amount of time we spent with them in the opening.
yes,
I think because a lot of movies don't do that. They jump straight into the action. This one takes its time. It's a bit of a slow burn, but then
but
it
oh man,
rewards
yes,
it rewards you
it
in
really
plain
does.
plentiful.
And then
So
we get to the ending where again Preacher Boy is on the run. Remick catches him right as the sun's coming up. There's this really awesome thing where Preacher Boy smashes the guitar against Remick's head, and he gets the fucking piece of it stuck in his head, and you see kind of like the vampire collective hive mind there. And then Smoke comes out of nowhere, manages to stake Remick right as the sun comes up. And they're the only two survivors as the sun comes up and burns the rest of the vampires to a crisp. And then Smoke sends Preacher Boy on his way. He tells him to live a full life to get away while Smoke stays behind and deals with the rest. Because you almost forget, they're like, oh yeah, the KKK is still waiting for them in the sunrise. So Smoke waits for them, finishes them all off, gets shot. Is reunited with Annie and their undead child in the afterlife. So that was kind of set up that Smoke wasn't going to make it throughout. But what's interesting is, so you have this interesting tie back into the beginning where Preacher Boy is seen going up to his father, who asked him to put down the guitar, but Preacher Boy can't do it, and he's last seen driving away. Now, Ryan Coogler had told us that there was going to be not one but two post-credit scenes. So naturally, we're waiting. And what I didn't realize is that he did a classic Marvel thing, but applied it to an original movie where he took the ending of the movie and made it the mid-credit scene where we see a much older Preacher Boy years later as an old man portrayed by famed blues musician Buddy Guy as he's just wrapping up on a night. And who walks into the bar? Who walks into the bar, Luke?
It's Stack and Mary.
It's Stack and Mary. It's revealed they survived. They survived the skirmish and have still been alive all these years.
That was awesome.
That was the scene of the movie. That was the scene of the movie because the thing is, they did a really good job of again, there was so much chaos happening that you didn't realize that they'd escaped. But then you think back and you're like, oh, that makes sense because the last time we see Smoke and Stack, they're fighting each other. And you can still see there's like a little bit of like brotherly connection because throughout the fight, Stack is being like, man, I'm just trying to do this for you. I'm trying to look out for us ultimately at the end of the day. And even though Smoke, chose to die so that he could be with Annie and his child, the fact that he made Stack promise to let Preacher Boy live out a peaceful life now that Remick was gone, I thought that was so brilliant. That was so brilliant. And then you see them walk in and they're dolled up in like all their like modern day swag. Hailee Steinfeld with the lollipops. I'm like, God damn. Like, this is breaking so many different levels of Inception. And they go up to him and they're like, you've lived a long life. If you want, we can take away all your pain and anguish. And he's like, man, I'm an old man. I think I'm good. I think I'm good to die out like this. And he's like, and they're like, you still think about that day? And he's like, that was the most traumatizing day of my life. But the shitty thing is that before all that nonsense went down with the vampires and stuff, that was the best day of my life. And then it's think back. And then Michael B. Jordan ends the movie with one of the great lines too. He's like, that was the last great day of my life too. It was the last time I saw my brother alive. It was the last time that I got to see the sunrise. Oh man, like echoing Black Panther just a little bit, but oh man, it seems like that just give me tingles ultimately at the end of the day. Oh,
I thought okay, it's a great movie. The movie's over, and then remember, okay, right?
Sauce.
There's post credit scenes, and then it starts, and then bang, they walk in. I'm like, oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah,
right
they're like, that's good stuff right there. And of course, me being me, I'm like, oh my god, sequel with those two. But I'm like, nah, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, I'm not asking for a sequel.
Yeah, definitely
I don't really know what you do.
This
with
movie
one,
needs to remain. This movie needs to remain untouched. This movie needs to remain like a lone star ultimately at the end of the day. And the fact that again, it is getting as much praise as it is tells you everything that you need to know about this.
Yeah, I didn't stay for the second one, but I know it's not.
You're not missing much. It's just
it's also like an MCU one where the second
that is an MCU one where it's like, yeah, we're just gonna make you wait until the end.
Yeah, they were kind of clearing us out. There weren't many of us in the theater.
That's the other thing too. I got lucky because I was in Syracuse watching this, and thankfully there was a Metallica concert literally that night, so the theater was almost empty because everybody was at the Metallica concert. So we ended up kind of getting lucky there. But yeah. Oh man, good stuff. Good stuff.
Now,
it's
next
funny.
question. I think you will have the same answer as me. Best Picture nomination.
Oh yeah. 100%.
I think the way it's being celebrated.
Yes, this is going to be an everything everywhere all at once situation. This will get Best Picture. This is going to maintain momentum over the course of the year. It helps that it open generally later in April, but this is going to. But if the rest of this year, specifically with blockbusters, goes the way that I'm thinking it will, if this ends up being like the most critically celebrated movie for the rest of the year, 100%. Best Picture, Best Director, possibly Best Actor for Michael B. Jordan, which would be
that would be win anything. But
I don't know if it'll win anything, but the nominations, that will be very, very nice. And the fact that, again, Jordan Peele has gotten a nomination before Coogler is insane. The fact that Black Panther got all of those accolades, but not Best Director for Coogler. But no, this will be very, very well deserved, and it should win a lot of the. If this doesn't win score, at the very least, like it deserves score.
He won last year.
He deserves to win again. This is a better score than Oppenheimer and Black Panther, if you ask me. So yeah,
and he's probably doing the Odyssey. So
100% he's doing the Odyssey.
He's gonna go. He's gonna three-peat
score winner. I'm down. Lubeski did it for cinematography. He can do it. What's it called? Yeah. So honestly, this movie deserves to win technicals, costume design, visual effects, editing, cinematography. This movie deserves to win all of those technicals, honestly. And if it can get the original screenplay win as well, Oh man, this movie's gonna go far. This movie's gonna go very, very far. Granted, again, the other thing too also is this movie has a lot of advantages in its corner because it had relatively no competition. The fact that its only competition really for the first half of the year in terms of quality was Black Bag should tell you everything you need to know. The fact that Mickey 17 really could not measure up to this. Again, this is another kind of installment in Warner Brothers kind of placing big bets on auteur directors. Mickey 17 didn't work out exactly the way that they wanted. This though seems to be paying off. And then if one battle after another, when that comes out at the end of September, if that can also do for Warner Brothers what this movie is doing, that would definitely mark a good sign for them, to say the least. But
Hold on, I'm completely tripping. I've skipped the year of the Oscars. Goranson did not win last year with someone else, but he won.
no,
the
2
year
years ago.
before.
2 years
Yeah,
ago for
I'm
Oppenheimer.
I'm just completely tripping.
Yeah, score this past year
it was a
was
striker.
this past year was LOL Crawley for The Brutalist. That's for
Yeah, that's right.
Or sorry, that was cinematography. But whoever did the score for The
But he
Brutalist.
then all by all means he can get his third. It's
Yes.
not going to be a
Yes,
back-to-back.
let him get his third, his fourth. I don't
I'm
care.
on board then.
I don't care. Give him as many as he wants. Because again, like you said, he's the score composer that's still innovating all the way to this day. So yeah, Sinners, man. What are we giving it out of 5?
I'm giving it a very strong 4.5. It's
Same.
not quite the 5,
Same.
but it's certainly better than the 4. So
Yes.
4.5.
Yeah.
I think this will remain in my top 5, top 10 definitely. Will
Yes.
it remain in the top 5? That is yet to be seen.
That is yet to be,
a lot of movies.
Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but
No.
it is very good. It is very, very good. Easily the best of the year, though that's not saying much. Like I said, 4.5 out of 5. Again, I feel like this is the first movie where I don't need to say go out and see it in a theater because almost everybody who's seen this has seen it in a theater. It's the reason why it's getting the rave reviews that it is. It's the first kind of big epic movie that we have of the year. And again, the first kind of big epic movie that we've had so far this decade after Batman, Top Gun, Avatar, Oppenheimer, Barbie, Dune, both Dune movies. That's actually original. Brutalist tried, but ultimately Brutalist was more of a niche art house movie. So this is the first one I feel like that's actually original and is actually succeeding in that sense. So we'll see about the longevity of this movie as it goes forward. And yeah, Luke, I know I already asked you this in the last stream, but where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. Look for my Sinners coverage in January when it features in the top 10 video, hopefully. And it's gonna be a good year. Like a lot of blockbustery stuff in the summer, but then we know how it gets after that with
Yes.
your
Indeed.
PTAs, your
Yep.
Aaron,
Your
Aronofsky's,
PTAs, your Darren
and
Aronofsky's,
whatnot.
your Kogonodas. There's also a trailer for a new horror movie that Jordan Peele's producing called Him. That looks pretty good. Keeper from Osgood Perkins, Roofman with Channing Tatum. This is gonna be an interesting fall. The fall, we just have to hold that through the summer. Hope that the majority of the blockbusters are decent for the summer, and I think we could have an interesting in fall. Like I said, my stock in 2025 has not let out yet, even though the first quarter of the year was all but entirely let down. But that's okay because the first quarter of the year was TV based. So
Yeah.
if we get
my stock is with Marvel right now because Thunderbolts looks good, Fantastic Four looks better with every reveal. I'm like, oh.
Great, I can't wait, and I'm even still excited for Superman. So
I'm probably most excited for Superman out of all the.
Yeah, the Eddington trailer came out. That looks great. I'm waiting for the highest to lowest trailer. That looks good. Like I said, we're in for some treats this summer. If Ballerina, my whole thing is if Ballerina just holds up with the action, then we're good. Then we're set ultimately. So we're going to be breaking all of that down on next week's episode, which will be our last episode of the spring before we transition into the
Daredevil
summer blockbuster season.
Have you been watching Daredevil?
Oh yeah, we finished Daredevil this past week. It was good. It was solid. I liked it. It was set up for next season, the finale. Now that we're past this Frankenstein's monster of a season where it's very clear that they, pushed together both versions of the show. And again, there were some high points, there were some low points. It's not my favorite thing of the year, but I'm really sad, but I'm really happy that Daredevil is back. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good time watching it for those.
I'm looking forward to a season where the same people make the whole season.
Yes, instead of only the first and last 2 episodes.
Yeah, and the studio is really great. I hope the studio gets 18 seasons.
I don't know. I don't know if I can tune into it. It might be a thing of where I need to get past the pilot episode because I watched 20 minutes of the pilot and I'm like, I don't care. But
if you don't get past that, then you probably won't enjoy the rest. I enjoy it as like a fun thing weekly.
Yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. Andor starting this week.
And Andor starting.
The one good Star Wars project when
left.
When we're getting new announcements.
Starting tomorrow. Yeah, so we're gonna have a lot to cover on next week's episode. You're definitely not gonna want to miss that as we kind of break down everything that we're gonna be up to over the summer. And but yeah, this is a good time. It was nice actually having a new original movie to cover. So with all that
So
being
you give
said,
them like 3 years for the next
yeah,
original
exactly. For the
release.
next original movie, it's gonna be a long time before we get it. Oh man, 12 seasons of a short film. Watch more fucking movies, people. We'll see you guys next week.